Hi, Ian. Can you hear me? Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I restarted the classroom because I wasn't seeing you pop up.
Oh, you're all good.
Alrighty, how are you today?
I am doing great.
Oh, I'm
Um,
so glad to hear that.
yeah.
That's wonderful.
um, like
All
I
right.
mess. Oh,
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Say what you were gonna
well, I was
say.
just gonna say, like I messaged last time, I had a bit of a hectic week. But
Oh,
this week's much
yeah.
better than last week. So,
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Yeah. Oh, it's hard when you've got hectic weeks, like
mhm.
you're trying to, you know, keep up with everything.
It was a lot of phone calls.
Excuse me.
It was a lot of phone calls, a lot of like setting up appointments and stuff like that was stressing me out.
Oh, oh man. I'm
But
sorry to hear that. Well, I'm glad that this week has been much less stressful. That's
yes.
wonderful to hear. Okay, so you had sent through your recording. Um, so what did you think of the recording?
Okay, so for positives, I think I played around with the pacing of it a bit more. Um,
Yes,
and I thought that led to a more engaging kind of experience.
I
Um,
agree. I noticed that. Yes.
I think I still had trouble with there's this like middle-ish point where it feels like I could have played around with it a bit more, both in terms of tone and pacing. But that is one of the I guess things that I might want to work on a bit more is how to like properly not only convey but like get it through the mic in terms of like some of these emotional moments because I would record it and then I would listen back to it and I would feel like okay when I like in my head and like my own perspective and voice and all that stuff it felt like I was like really emotional at one part of the recording and then I'd listen back and it wouldn't come through the mic in the same kind of way so I wasn't sure if like that was I was wrong in that assessment in terms of the emotionality or if I'm just not projecting enough um in the proper ways to get that across a mic, You're muted, by the way. Sorry.
There we go. Sorry about that. I must have hit
You're
the
okay.
button accidentally. Yeah, yeah. So, what you're saying totally makes sense. I felt like it kind of had like a slow burn, kind of quiet intensity to it,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes is exactly what we want. Um, so, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with having that like quiet intensity, slow burn. Um, so, it's a style. So if you're wanting a bigger intensity, a bigger more dramatic, I think that one thing that you can do is having sharper shifts. So we can have more abrupt changes. So for
Yeah.
instance, with the pacing, you can be like much more slow. And then you can pause and suddenly be a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or with pitch, I could be a little bit lower, and then suddenly I'm going to escalate and go a little bit higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can add a little bit of drama. So, thinking in terms of some contrast, or I could be more flowing in one section where my voice is flowing and connected. And then I get kind of sharp and punchy in
Right.
another, right? So, thinking in terms of contrast is going to help you to have more of that drama, and the audience is going to perceive that as more intense, more exaggeration and more contrast, I would say is what we want to try for. But overall, I felt like what you were doing had, like I was saying, a really nice kind of like slow burn, slow build. And it had, that kind of like it's like a subtle intensity throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like a
which I think
seething
works
kind
really
of.
beautifully. So
Mhm.
there's, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, like okay, so for that specific recording,
Hmm.
um, I thought, yeah, doing the more kind of, under the hood anger was
Yeah.
more fitting. But there
Hmm.
was one part of it where I felt like I guess comparing it to like music dynamics, um, it could have
Right.
been like a little bit more forte when I was like a
Mm.
little bit more mezzo forte or that kind of thing,
Sure, yeah. So what I would say about that is that sometimes with dynamics and volume, I
Mhm.
will caution against having it be too extreme of a volume change. And the reason is that microphones can't always handle sudden changes in volume.
Right.
Um, and we might have to change and adjust the input gain levels. So if I was going to intentionally be like, okay, I'm going to suddenly be louder here, like I'm shouting, I would need to actually stop the recording probably and adjust the input gain levels and check that that was set in a way that the microphone can
Mhm.
accept that and adjust. Yeah.
So on that topic,
Hmm.
because I've had these kind of troubles in the past in
Yeah.
terms of like certain high intensity moments and mic clipping and
Right.
all that stuff. Like, so if you're recording a really dramatic scene that has uh like really high hills and low valleys in terms of
Yeah.
this like volume and emotions and everything,
Right.
how do you go about, I guess, recording something like that without either constantly clipping it or constantly being under the like threshold, I guess,
Right.
of volume?
Um, so, one thing you can do is say, okay, I'm going to test what my loudest volume is going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and then record the whole thing at that loudest volume. But then the issue is when I'm soft and I bump it up, it's going to have like a fuzzy quality around the
Right.
edges. It's
There's gonna
not
be
going to
like a lot
be
of room
totally
noise
clear.
and yeah.
So the optimal way to do it would be to kind of plan out where you're going to be soft and where you're going to be louder, and
Mm-hmm.
then record those separately. And then you'd have
Okay.
to edit it all together. Um, but yeah, it is a little tricky. So there are times where it's like, so if you have an audio engineer, that's really helpful because then you can just focus on the acting component. But
Right.
if you don't, then it's like, Oi, okay, so it's just me. And so really kind of planning out exactly what you want to do is helpful. So if I know on this one line, for instance, I did that with there's like a spacecraft and it's like we're gonna crash kind of a thing
Mm-hmm.
recently and in the last week. And my character has like moments where she's talking to different people on the spacecraft and she like yells to the back
Right.
and it's like has a couple lines. So like when I'm talking, just like stuff that I'm seeing on the screen and like trying to like flip switches and change things, I was
Mm-hmm.
a little bit softer. When I'm talking to my co-pilot, I was a little bit softer, but then and not soft, like there's intensity, so I'm present. But then when I'm
Right.
like shouting to the colonel and like the other people in the back, there, I know, okay, I'm going to be louder there. So I did those separately so that I could adjust accordingly. I have to set everything up for that.
Right.
Um, and then it's like, where's this person? We need blah blah blah, like
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. So, for those kind of lines, I was shouting, and so I had to know that setting the mic up. Additionally, certain mics are going to deal with those levels better than others. So,
Yeah.
like for instance, the SM7B was designed with rap and hip hop artists in mind. And
Mm-hmm.
so it can handle like, shouting into the mic and like really sharp consonants and um like really intense loud moments. Like it's designed to be able to handle sharp changes in volume and really like smacking the mic with the words and the consonants
Right.
and things. Um, and I mean, it's like an award-winning mic, and it handles that really well. So that's a great mic to be using if you're doing those like more intense like shouting things. I have other mics that would not handle that well. Um, for instance, I would never do that with a ribbon mic ever
Yeah.
because you could actually break the mic.
Yeah.
Um, so microphones have like a little, think of like a little piece of foil inside of
Hmm.
them. And as the air and the sound waves, so as the sound waves hit, it vibrates, and then that vibration is translated um,
Hmm.
into sound. But if I'm like really smacking it, you know, it can't process, and it's like so much that it's like jarring to the
Hmm.
mic, and it can't
Right.
process that. So you have to figure out like with your equipment too, what is my threshold? How much can it take? Really old microphones, the reason you'd see artists live pull away from the mic when they went louder is because the mic couldn't handle it. And so
Right.
when they were softer, they'd be here. And then when they would do like a really loud note, they'd pull back. And
Yeah.
it'd be like basically just them singing out to the audience. Um, because the mic couldn't handle that intensity and that loud quality. So you have to,
Hmm.
in some ways, play with your equipment, see what it can, process and do.
Right.
Um, I would say it's not advisable to do the pullback method, like being like, I'm gonna shout now. Um,
Right.
because
Because
you
you can
have to
definitely
be
hear
picked
it
up
in a
clearly.
recording.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not really the best way to handle that. The best way to handle it is to adjust the input gain level.
Hmm.
So for that, you'd have to like stop and like play around with your levels and double check
I've
everything.
I've seen some stuff online from like audio engineers and stuff where they recommend,
Yeah.
I guess, like taping certain sections of your
Mhm.
audio interface so that
Yeah.
you have like, all right, this is kind of my screaming volume, this is my normal talking volume, and this is like my whisper kind of volume.
Yeah.
Do you like go do that as well? Is that like a recommendable thing from
Yeah,
you?
just kind of like knowing what your basic settings would be for each
Hmm.
of those. I think that's a
Yeah.
great idea to kind of like so like I have notes written right by my setup on like just like think little reminders and things. So I think
Hmm.
that would be something to add to your notes on like, hey, if this, do that, if this, do that.
Hmm.
Um, here are like little reminders if
Yeah.
this happens, do that. Um,
So sorry, I don't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt,
but
but I'm
I
just
also think you kind of like learn over the more you do it. Like I don't really refer to that much. I have it, but I don't like refer to it much anymore just
yeah,
because it's kind of habit. But you'll get to where you just kind of know your settings. You'll just kind of know like
right.
for my setup, for my room, for my equipment, this is kind of my setup. But then every time I go into like a different recording space, the setup is going to be a little bit different, so I have to figure all that out again.
Right. Um, so in terms of like the acting versus like audio engineering aspect of
Yeah.
it, when you have to stop like those kinds of higher intensity scenes or like,
Mhm.
having to stop for a lower intensity scene, how does that, I guess, translate in your acting? Because, you know, in a lot of these high intensity scenes, you're typically building up to something, right?
Yes.
And so
Hmm.
stopping that tension right in the middle of it seems like it would be harder to like
Hmm.
adjust to when like past so like subconsciously in your mind, I guess for me. I'm thinking
Yeah.
like, you're building up to the scene, but in the back of your head you're thinking, but I'm gonna be stopping, right? I'm not actually building up to so like does
Oh,
that
I would say
disconnect
like
like
you
do
could go
anything
ahead
or
and just record the full scene.
oh okay. Yeah.
Like if you're feeling like, oh, I'm gonna get like distracted or pulled out of it,
Yeah.
just record the full scene.
Okay.
And then you just know like I won't be able to use this chunk of it. And then
Mhm.
like set everything up for when you're loudest and then record the full scene and then just know I'm only going to use that chunk of it.
Right.
Like if you need to feel like, oh, I'm getting into the whole thing,
Right.
just set it for, the part that you're planning to use. And
That
then
makes
what's
sense.
great is
Yeah.
you can just, do multiple takes and you can just edit and copy and paste and
Mhm.
take the chunks that you like best.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Because I think without that, it would be a lot harder to. It feel more measured than I think acting should
Mm.
be, I guess, or the vision of acting I have in my head,
Yeah.
where uh you're supposed to like really get into character or your role or your position. And
Yeah.
if it's like, I don't know, sectioned off in that way, it feels less like acting and more like practice for acting, I guess. I'm not exactly
Mm.
sure how to describe it, but
Sure. I mean, I would say that when you're doing live theater, you get
mhm,
to, just really get into the scene and just get into the flow of it. And I would say that when you're doing things like film and voiceover, there are going to be times where they're like, just record this line again. And you
mhm.
have to practice and be able to just in the moment do just that moment, you know?
Right.
Um, and sometimes they're like, hey, do just that line, 10 times. And they'll give you little tweaks on how to approach it, or they're like, oh, I need to adjust something with my setup. Like, you did nothing wrong, but like they need something different, from their perspective.
Mhm.
Um, and so, sometimes you do have to do that. And it's, they're like, oh no, we don't want the whole thing. We just want this spot.
Right.
Um, and so you'll have to be able to then adjust. So that's something I would say you'll need to practice doing and getting
Okay.
used to is can I, so, a good exercise for that might be take this same line, so one line, and then give yourself an action to go with it. So I
Mhm.
am accusing them, so like you can take literally anything. So I can take Mary had a little lamb, right? And if I was
Mhm.
accusing something of something like, you did this, I know you did, and I put
Mhm.
that kind of intensity to the line. So it doesn't matter what the line is. What matters is that I can do that line with that kind of attitude and action behind it.
Right.
So, if I'm accusing, Mary had a little lamb, and then if I am begging them, Mary had a little lamb, and then I'm cheering them up.
Mhm.
Mary had a little lamb, right? And then I'm
Yeah.
demanding. Mary had a little lamb, and then I'm encouraging them. Mary had a little lamb, and then I'm flirting. Mary had a little lamb, And
Yeah.
so if you take different actions, and you try the same line with that action behind it, I think that would be a really good exercise to get you used to, you know, just doing the one liner and doing it with an intention, an attitude, an emotion behind it, really like going after something, right? So having
Mhm.
that action behind it, I think would be really helpful.
Okay.
Sometimes knowing what it is that you want from the other person can be helpful. So I'm like, I could say, okay, I am demanding an apology, or I am flirting with them because I want them to ask me on a date, or I am cheering them up because I want them to stop crying and say everything's going to be okay, or I am accusing them of this because I want a confession. I
Yeah.
want them to admit what they did, so so different, you know, things that you could try. Um, just, just as an acting exercise to see like what tools help you get into that.
Mhm.
Um, so what would you say would be, I mean, another thing you could do, which I've done this, is just take that line and say it 5 times in a row so that you kind of
Okay.
like build up. Because, like, the first time you might feel like I'm not really in it. So you try it that first time and you're like, that wasn't quite there. So you'll just do that same line until you feel like you've got it. Like, try that same line 10 different
Mhm.
ways and then listen back through and be like, ooh, this is my favorite. I'll use that one. I'll keep that one.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you In terms of like recording, even not even just lines, but like a scene multiple times over for like
Mhm.
an audition or something. When, I guess, do you feel confident that you should send it in? Because there is that, kind of uh conflict between, wanting to record multiple auditions and be timely with it, but also wanting to
Mhm.
make sure your audition is as, good as possible. So like when
Yeah.
should perfectionism end and like begin, I guess, in this kind of.
Oh yeah, that's totally fair. So because I truly could just spend all day every day, you
Right.
know, like it could take me a while, it could take me
Mm-hmm.
like I could be on it, for, the whole day to get one audition in, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's not really a great way to make a living doing this, right? So,
Right.
on voices.com alone, I may have 20 auditions a day, right? And so it's like I can't spend the entire day on one audition and
Yeah.
make a living, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, because, they know in the first like 5 to 10 seconds if they think you're a good fit. And it's like sometimes you just are not the voice that they're looking for, and that's
Right.
okay. Um, so I need more people to hear me in
Yeah.
order to get, opportunities. So I would say, I need to be sure that, you know, I'm mm, I'm putting myself out there. So, I say, how much time do I have? So if I say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
my goal is I want to get 10 auditions done and I have 3 hours, then
Right.
it's like, okay, well, I really only have about 20 minutes for each audition. Not
Mm-hmm.
even that, because 20 minutes would be nine of the auditions, right?
Right.
So I'm going to say, okay, between 15 to 20 minutes for each audition, if that's my goal. And so I just have to challenge myself to be like, okay, what's the best I can do with
Mm-hmm.
these in this amount of time? And, then I just put my best foot forward. Um, because I also have noticed, like, if I try to be like, well, that's okay, I'll just spend more time later in the day or something, like, I might just be exhausted and like my voice is
Yeah.
tired and I'm tired. So it's like I have found it's better to be like, okay, I'm going to get it done quicker and
Mm-hmm.
be more efficient when I have energy and I'm fresh, right?
Yeah.
Um, obviously you can always get up earlier or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
um, like we have limited amounts of time in a day and limited
Yeah.
amounts of energy in a day. And so it's like we do the best that we can do with what we've got.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would say like starting out, maybe limit yourself to an hour. Say, okay, I'm going to give
Okay.
myself an hour to get this done and be like, okay, this is what I'm focusing on. This is what I'm getting done. I have 1 hour. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and it kind of like based off of that, kind of scales with your comfortability, I guess, with
Hmm.
voiceover in general. Because
Yeah.
in your case, right, you're like,
Hmm.
okay, 10 auditions, 3 hours, I can get this cranked out, right?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
like being less comfortable or feeling like my accuracy isn't quite there on certain things, that
Sure.
would be a like 10 obviously is kind of a
So then
daunting
prioritize.
thing. So
Say, okay,
exact yes.
these are the two that I am most interested in and that I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm the best fit for. So I like to say like this is what they're looking at. Like this is what they're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
So then going, all right, so I'm gonna prioritize XYZ. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
focus in on these things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of unrelated, but I mean it's still related to voiceover, obviously.
Hmm.
But something that I've found, I guess, challenging over like getting back into voiceover and getting back in the groove of meeting up with a vocal coach and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and just another little clarifier, I guess, before I ask. I've typically struggled with motivation, like not just in voiceover, but different parts of my life. Either because sometimes things come too easily to me and that doesn't make me feel like I want to do it as much,
Hmm.
or like, just natural kind of life avoidance kind of things of, oh, this is like either too this kind of area of my life is too stressful right now. I'm gonna push this aside or whatever. So with all that in mind, I guess what like keeps you motivated to do something like, okay, 3 hours, I'm gonna do 10 auditions. And then, the next day having to do something similar or be like, oh, I have all these meetings with students or
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
else,
Well, I would
kind of life
say,
stuff you have going on, I guess.
yeah, I would say for one, it's something I
Mhm.
really enjoy doing.
Right.
For two, I think of it as my job. Auditioning is
Yes.
part of the job. So I have to prioritize, like, this is part of my job. I will do it.
Mhm.
And just like you would prioritize any other job, it's like, this is part of my job. I have to be there. I have to do it. And so you
Right.
have to show up. You have to be there. And it's like, this is how I make my living. So it's like, I will do
Right.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
So,
not an option, right? So
right.
like
Yeah.
going, this is not an option. I must do this. I think that's the key.
Did you have
So.
anything that like I guess this will